Hello.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. How we doing?
So far, so good.
Good. Dog was- Right? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
The dog was doing good, I said.
Yes. Something interesting was happening over at Denise's place.
I see. Was that Denise's dog?
So
Hey, Mara.
Hi, Steve. How's Princeton today?
What's that?
How's Princeton today?
Okay.
Oh, Cam, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm not sure how Princeton is.
I don't think it turned into Ocam. That's cute.
Late alphabet, North Country, you know, one of those.
It's snowy here. Okay. My yard is full of snow. Whoop, I can hear an echo. Hey, Matt. How you doing, Matt?
Doing well, or as well as can be expected. So it's a
Understand.
little bit of a tough week, but this
Oh,
morning
really?
feels good. Yeah, had some dental surgery,
Oh, I,
which is not the most fun.
no,
Definitely not.
been there, done that. It's not fun.
Avoided that so far.
Put it off as long as you can.
Okay.
what are you talking about? I can't think of, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Your wisdom teeth?
I had a very serious bunch of things done.
Oh,
That if I went into it in a group would set the wrong tone for the day, I'm afraid.
okay.
Oh, dear.
I can accept that.
I'm just grateful to be here and smiling today. Let's put it that way.
Hey, Mara. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks, Steve.
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah. Nice to be here. Have to tidy things up a little bit. Robert Peters, I don't think I've met you. Hi.
That is
Hi.
new.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in
we
your
can.
car, huh?
Can you see me?
Yeah, you're in your
Yes.
car.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
good to see you.
I wasn't sure. Hi.
Hey,
I'm
welcome.
Thanks. I'm in my car, so I
Yeah.
hope it's, yeah. Should I mute? Should I
No,
mute? Or?
Not yet.
When we start the service, I'll mute everyone.
Oh, okay.
And then you people can unmute themselves when they need to speak, during joys and
Okay.
sorrows, whatever, but
Bruce, are
for
you
now,
doing
we're just
tech
all
support?
chatting because we're pre-service.
Bruce is being tech team today.
Tech support,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm running the.
Bruce, you can go ahead and roll now. Matt, we can. move
Okay,
the others.
okay, so I'm gonna
I
mute
got it.
everybody. We're gonna get started.
could go ahead and all. Our chalice lighting words this morning are those of Lisa Doge. Why a flaming chalice, the question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing, a cup of water to quench your spirit's thirst, a cup of wine for celebration and dedication, the flame of truth, the fire of purification, oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us. In these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, a light of warmth, our souls, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home.
Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester's online Sunday morning worship service. We're glad that you have joined us virtually this morning. It's an act of love that we gather in this way, once again, during this time of pandemic response. We begin by that in Worcester, Massachusetts, we work, learn, live, and worship on the seized and central ancestral homeland of the Nipmuc people who survive and remain active as the Nipmuc Nation. We hope that this service gives you an opportunity to pause for a few minutes, to gather in community so that we might care for each other. Take a moment to reflect on our own well-being, discover opportunities even as we are for spiritual refreshment and service in the wider world, even as we are at a personal distance. We gather this way this morning in solidarity with those families in our community who have been exposed or diagnosed with COVID-19 in recent days. The health and safety team met this week to assess plans for the coming weeks and is recommending that UUCW go online only for worship and RE during the month of January. So that we might come to know you better, as you are able, please list your name on your video feed. Please note that this service is being live streamed on Facebook and is being recorded for future availability on the church YouTube channel, as well as our website worship archive. Following the service this morning, you are invited to join us for virtual fellowship hour. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. Our opening words today are by the Reverend Dorothy Baruch. Come, all you who seek truth, abide in love and honor peace. Enter into this house with thanksgiving. Come into these gates with praise. Enter into this sacred space, all you who hunger for righteousness. Through these doors, all footsteps lead to the source of our being, where we shall be filled. For as we come together, as we congregate for holy purposes, two essences are required. First, the assemblage of the faithful, the numberless, nameless throng of seekers. Second, the ineffable presence, the numinous, infinite God. We invoke both entities. We beckon to the worshiper to join the consecrated rites, and we summon the spirit of love, the eternal God of all creation. Before we start singing, Matt, many of you know that my mother died last week, and her memorial service is this afternoon. It befits following this service, I need to tell you that my faith was born through my mother. My mother taught me how to be a holy person by taking me to Girl Scouts, taking me outside, teaching me how to give to others, how to take care of our planet, how to be a really good human being. And it was all centered in love. I think that that is the source of my faith, in spite of all the many other places I tried to find it. Out in the woods, doing good deeds, and coming from a place of love. If you would like to know more about my mother's life, you're welcome, though you certainly do not have to come to her memorial service this afternoon. It will be Zoomed. So I just needed to share the source of my faith because she's so much on my mind right now. Thank you.
Please join in your place of worship, our opening hymn.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. we can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom, that is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world would die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
I'd like to invite Claire Brayton to deliver our religious exploration moment this morning. Good morning, Claire.
There we go. Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can.
Good. All right, so this morning we continued our RE class with our monthly theme of repairing the world and of renewal. We focused on nutrition and ways to take care of our bodies. Everyone brought their favorite fruit, vegetable, or snack to share. And then we read a funny story about a girl named Lola, who was a very picky eater, but whose older brother had a clever way of having her try new foods. I recommend this book. And then lastly, we had some conversations about our favorite foods, our least favorite foods, how to try new foods a little bit at a time, and which might increase our liking them. We had some good conversation. And then we talked about our 7th UU principle and how it reminds us to respect and take care of the interconnected web, including the water we drink, the food we grow and eat, and our own bodies. And we also tied in the 2nd principle, which reminds us that not everyone has access to good food or maybe can't afford fresh fruits and vegetables, and that we as UUs are committed to working towards making our world a more fair and equitable place. And that was it.
Thank you so much, Claire.
You're very welcome.
Be careful, little eyes, what you see, for the miracle of sight comes at a fee, and in knowledge, truth is key, lest a lie far-fetched bring a warrior to his knees. Certainty, a fact or truth undoubtedly established, a basic requirement before anything should be published. Lost, quite sadly, as the news makes the rounds. Cause like bloodhounds, we chase the most interesting new thing, caring little if our source is clean, ignoring the questions, where is it coming from, where has it been? So either by sight or sound, we go bottoms up on the new information, making sure nothing is left out of whatever came right in, whether as pictures, voice notes, or in writing. Excitement or fear, refusing not to let rationality's light in, so we share, believing we are doing the right thing, forgetting a half-truth is worse than a lie. Thanks to the internet and its ease of access to reach 1,000 a day. From the genesis, it becomes a game of numbers real quick. A little, a lot, too many, too much, a handful and then some. Every little piece you share counts, why not make sure it can be counted on? Misinformation is a dangerous weapon, for it takes one man to squeeze a trigger, but a lot more are sure to hear the sound of a gun. So please, don't go sharing a story online just for fun. Cause like a wildfire, you may not be able to contain what you have begun. If only you knew what could happen if it didn't prove true, you'd be wary of what the poison could do even to you. In these trying times, it is our obligation not to blow things out of proportion. Do heed this moral instruction, for it is best to err on the side of caution. Don't share it just because you hear it. Don't share it just because you fear it. Don't share it if you can't swear it.
We come to that moment in our service when we're given an opportunity to share that which is symbolic of our own efforts, our own beliefs, our own values and ethics, that which is symbolic of the way in which we would like to support that which supports us. In our case, every time that we come together for worship, we invite an offering symbolic of all of this and in service to the ministry and mission of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester. So I invite you to participate in our virtual offering this morning, either by texting 508-231-5335 or by visiting www.uucworcester.org/donate. The good news this week is that we continue to welcome and to settle an Afghan refugee family of 12. A number of people in the congregation has been involved in this effort, and the greater news is that we have found them an apartment or a house to rent so that they can move from their temporary locale on February 4th. News will be shared this week of items that we may need or ways that you can offer items that you have in order to be able to supply what they need to settle into their new abode. Plans are underway to register the children in this family for school and to find work. I hope that all of you will stay tuned for information that will come from our refugee ministry team in the coming days so that we might also continue this important effort. And I want to thank all of you who have spent time this week helping to settle the family and to invite them into deeper relationships with members of this congregation, but also members of Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Holden and Congregation Beth Israel here in Worcester and Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Worcester, as well as a host of other families in the community that have networked with these congregations in order to make this very important transition happen. So now I invite you to participate in our offering in order that we might continue this work and such other good work in the world. We come now to that time in our service when we're given pause to consider what is deepest in our hearts or most profoundly on our minds or in the work of our hands. In the days that have transpired or in the prospect of days to come, joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of our capacity to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journey. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this morning to unmute yourself or raise your hand in order that we might call on you and spotlight you to share your words. Are there joys or sorrows to be shared this day? Kate Bajun.
Hi, I'm Matt Bajun. Kate Bajun is with me. I have a joy. My high school friend digitized, or he had someone digitize an old show that we were in, and it was like a video recording from the seats of a theater, and it was a performance of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in the early 90s. Recording from the seats of the and it was wonderful to see the production again. And last night we had a Zoom call with the four guys that are my closest friends from high school, and it was a lovely, lovely chance to reconnect.
Thank you so much, Matt. Are there other joys or sorrows to be shared this day?
I have one.
There we go. Who is that?
Bernadette Nelson.
Bernadette, please.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I have a sorrow. My mother-in-law has a compression fracture of her spine from osteoporosis. She basically just lifted something, and that can happen when you have severe osteoporosis. So I want to encourage everyone, all the women and the men, to do everything you can to keep your bones and muscles strong and healthy so you don't end up with painful compression fractures or breaking your hip or anything like that. So I encourage you all to stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. Robin Mitskovich writes, just hearing that my brother-in-law, Ralph Caracciolo, was found dead on a trail this morning where he went out for his morning run. So I want to offer a moment to surround Robin and her family during this very difficult time. Let us be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. The Holy One, who comes to us this day in the form of thoughts about those in need of healing and hope, comes to us in the form today of memory. We would invite the spirit of love and the spirit of compassion and the spirit of healing and wholeness to descend upon all that are needful. Mindful this day of Karen Stevens's mother, who has had a scary couple of weeks. And we would like to honor the fact that while she could not eat or breathe for several days and ended up in the emergency room, she is now home. Mindful this day of the Caracciolo family and Robin and Mike Mitskovich and their sudden loss. Mindful this day of the need to protect ourselves and each other in order that we might remain healthy and whole. And for all that which has gone unsaid but is no less real, we give great and abiding thanks. Amen. And blessed be.
Springtime without winter would enter with a yawn, and dawn without the night would be a tedium of light. Reunion follows parting, renewal follows death, and the songs of love have grown from the very seeds our doubt has sown. Our hearts and minds would never grow. Our dreams would have nowhere to go. We'd never change the status quo. Yes, without a doubt, we'd be hanging on to notions that are better gone. Try to love the questions, those many questions. Trust your intuition. Cherish your doubt. Cherish your doubt. Don't throw it out. That's what true belief is about. With a faith, both tempered and strong, like a questioning only comes in along. Cherish your doubt. Cherish your doubt. Don't throw it out. Don't you know that mighty oaks can weather a drought? Any truth worth taking to heart, tested a bit, will not fall apart. Cherish your doubt. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of what you'll find. Cherish your doubt. Don't throw it out. That's one thing you can't do without. When you walk that less traveled route, suddenly new ideas misroute. On your reason and compassion. Don't throw it out. Although it may not be in fashion. Don't throw it out. Be afraid of what you'll find. Don't throw it out. Leave your fears behind and cherish your doubt. Don't you ever refuse it. You can know the whole mountain. Cherish your
want to unmute first. I want to begin with a story about how Nasruddin created truth. It goes like this. Laws as such do not make people better, said Mullah Nasruddin to the king. They must practice certain things in order to become attuned to inner truth. This form of truth resembles apparently truth only slightly. The king decided that he could and would make people observe the truth. He could make them practice truthfulness. His city was entered by a bridge. On this, he built a gallows. The following day, the gates were opened at dawn. The captain of the guard was stationed with a squad of troops to examine all who entered. The announcement was made. Everyone will be questioned. If they tell the truth, they'll be allowed to enter. If they lie, they'll be hanged. Nasruddin stepped forward. Where are you going? Said one of the guards. I'm on my way, said Nasruddin slowly, to be hanged. We don't believe you, said the captain of the guards. Very well, if I have told a lie, hang me. And then came the words, but if we hang you for lying, we will have made what you said come true. That's right. Now you know what truth is. Your truth. When I first contemplated delivering a reflection on the age of disbelief, I was, like many of you, deeply concerned about the increasing divide that we've been experiencing in our country and world, and the proliferation of ideas and beliefs that seem so contrary to a reasonable assessment of what was happening around us, especially in the midst of pandemic. I couldn't understand the push against wearing masks or against getting vaccinated during a pandemic that was literally killing millions of people worldwide. I couldn't understand the proliferation of hoax-like remedies to the virus. I had also been fatigued to the point of near exhaustion by the near daily demonstrations of outright lying and disinformation that was being fomented among the religious and political extreme in our country. And I was at a loss for how to respond to such a reality. I had grown up within a religious household that had valued science as a harbinger of health and knowledge about the human body and about the world and about the universe. I was raised to appreciate the ethical lessons of religious traditions that have sought since time immemorial to point people to a more just and loving way to be together in the world. I understood then, as I do now, that such lessons can also be twisted to support efforts to enslave and subjugate and subordinate others and to grow bodies of knowledge, but I had never been taught how to face this reality other than to be curious. It seemed to me that in this particular moment, that curiosity wasn't going to be enough. So how should I respond to what was happening? I returned to an old adage that was first attributed to St. Francis as a grounding for this journey. Seek first to understand and then only to be understood. Along with reverencing science and religion both in my upbringing, the other thing that I had been taught was humility, to recognize that the truths that I recognized were partial, most of them, that there were stories that would enhance those truths, that would expand them, that could challenge them over time. And I would appreciate the fact that truth is only as good as the knowledge that we have in the moment, and when that knowledge changes, we need to learn to adapt to that reality. That included knowledge not only about the world and the universe and other people, but also about myself. On this particular journey, I began with a lot of reading. What I came to know is that the divide we're currently experiencing has a long history. This country, while established to provide a context for religious and political reform, did so only partially for white landowning males. Books like White Trash, A 400-Year History of Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg helped unfold for me the story of the founding of this country on the labor and backs of men, women, and children whose existence was identified with the fallow land to be cultivated. They were called waste people. It's a history which is nuanced, and yet it is the very vision I return to when I read the history of populism in America, the 18th and 19th century response by those whose well-being was challenged by the rise of the Industrial Revolution. With the need for more cheap labor and cheaper labor, the rise of this movement is seen in the founding of the Know-Nothings in the 19th century, whose purpose was to oppose immigrants and Catholics believing in white Christian supremacy to seize power over minority populations. A movement that grew out of the secret society known as the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner, which formed gangs to harass immigrants and spread political propaganda against them. If you want to revisit this history in vivid color, I recommend the film The Gangs of New York. The Populist Party, established in 1892, was an outgrowth of this movement, also owing its origins to the Greenback Party of the 1870s and 1880s, which arose as the confluence of farming communities that organized through local granges. This effort wanted to initiate inflation to help with debt and supported an 8-hour workday as a part of a pro-labor platform. The Populist People's Party of 1892 adopted much of the Greenbacks' platform, including supporting a ban on foreign land ownership, state control of railroads, and shortened workdays. For me, the most important realization is that populism was fundamentally a movement that spoke to the experience of the abandonment of rural America and the exploitation of labor in urban America. And it wasn't long before it also bore the growth of evangelical Christianity, whose rise, attributed first to the Great Awakenings in this country, but whose role in American politics can be located in an era of the Scopes monkey trials in the year of 1925. That particular trial was argued and won by the populist Williams Jennings Bryant. This mistrust of science and the mistrust of academia, the mistrust of government and corporations are all based in a population who experienced the diminished capacity and population in rural America to the point where 4 corner towns had 3 corners cut off. One can understand when reading this history why people developed a healthy and, to my way of thinking now, unhealthy skepticism of everything that challenged their very existence. It reminds me very much of what I watched in the 1970s when the local farms in central New York State were essentially paid not to produce so that large agribusinesses would be able to reap the rewards of the tax benefits that were being offered to them by the federal government. These kinds of actions and the experience of generations of people who moved from home and went to the inner city, either to find work or to become educated, and then only to stay away from the place of their origins, helps to feed a sense of abandonment. And it is ripe environment for people to be taken advantage of. It's interesting to me that in articles like that of Ben Gaskins, who's a professor of political science at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, who recently wrote an article for the London School of Economics and Political Science periodical, who says it's often impossible to simply educate citizens about politics by exposing them to factual information. Because we have to consider not only how facts are reaching people, but the nature of the facts themselves. Accurate political understanding, he writes, is grounded more in social trust than in fact distribution. It is this particular dynamic of social trust which has been marred by histories of a sense that the world has moved beyond, and what we valued most has been challenged by that which others value most. it isn't that I'm making an apology for this reality, but I think it is important to understand that reality in order to be able to respond to it. This is where my experience in working with traumatized communities comes in for me most valuably. I have often taught congregations that have experienced, and individuals in those congregations who have experienced extreme traumas, that there is a difference between what happened in the general sense and what happened to you in the particular sense, you being people who have experienced the trauma. And that there are really facts that need to be honored in different ways. One is a set of facts that answers the question, what happened? And that involves a lot of investigation and the drawing of a lot of different experiences in order to be able to expose a trajectory of evidence that points to what may have occurred in a particular situation, whether it be a fire or a shooting or, you name it. The other is a set of facts associated with what happened to you. So in the case of congregations that have experienced traumas, often it is this experience of what happened to you that becomes the challenge over time. The trauma team that I work with introduced this notion of sacred ambiguity as a part of what we need to understand in order for healing to occur in communities. This is what the concept points to. As people experience the world and experience traumas, in the particular case I'm talking about, they have a particular kind of experience that is a combination of what happened and their body's response to what happened. And we know that when people experience traumas, their bodies react to those traumas in ways that work toward the preservation of their existence. And so our sensual selves literally either begin to become myopic or to become channeled toward that particular experience of survival. We see and we hear and we remember things specifically associated to that innate drive to survive. And that particular experience is different from the experience of trying to figure out exactly what happened. It creates micro-narratives. People who experience these kinds of things try to find each other and share those experiences and to begin to build relationships based on those experiences. And during that process, there are micro-narratives that form, and those micro-narratives start to compete for allegiance by leaders and others in the system, those who have experienced what happened and those who hear about it afterwards. And if we're not careful, we can become very vulnerable to those media sources and those narratives that continue to simply push our own experience of what happened. And within organizations, at least, that particular vying for allegiance, if you will, can be the ground upon which people either feel included or alienated from the larger story that's being crafted. I want you to think about this in terms of a larger historical context. And ask yourself, in terms of the histories that we're learning to read, whose story has been told over centuries, and what we need to do to be able to break open that reality and to begin to recover some of the micro narratives, some of those narratives of people who have been marginalized, in order for us to flesh out that particular sense of what really happened. I think this is in large part what critical race theory is doing for us during this particular era. It is helping us understand that only a portion of the history that was experienced in this country has been published and honored by the national narrative that continues to provoke a particular kind of nationalism, a particular kind of patriotism, and does not evoke for many people the experience of those who are their ancestors, the histories out of which they have come, the histories that have impacted them most directly. It is the recovery of those voices and that experience that helps us challenge the reality of the history that we have learned over decades and that has been perpetuated over centuries. For me, recognizing the interplay between the way in which a narrative is created to report what happened and the inclusion or exclusion of the particular experiences of others helps me understand why this particular quandary is so very important. Now, the history that I began to outline for you continues through our own experience in the 1970s when the moral majority came into being, and we see that religion itself became a mechanism to be able to foster the particular narrative of a particular group of people and to foment within them a sense of rebellion. And for me, I have always had a particular kind of frustrated experience with that particular history. I think that it is a history that only that has been the purveyor of bad theology, as far as I'm concerned. That it evokes a particular kind of literalism that does not bode well in the world in which we live, and it is been something of a challenge to be able to address that reality within larger groups of people. And I think the advent of social media has created echo chambers that continue to churn this kind of experience. Now we've come to an age of QAnon, where we have beliefs and commitments that are both historical and theological. But as one commentator notes, they're of a Gnostic framework, especially when it comes to things like QAnon, where knowledge, authority, and power, and some special knowledge that people share, they share only among themselves and share in communities and chat rooms. They write, but also a cosmic binary of good versus evil. The populist suspicion of traditional government institutions, media, and corporations, and the nationalistic lens of history, political authority, and cultural power all come to play in this. Continues, if you look at those, if you look at the middle points in particular, those are already existing in evangelicalism, and they exist in many other traditions. And then then the commentator, who is Ed Stitzer, writes, and what I want you to hear is that QAnon and some conspiracies travel well on the tracks that religion has already laid, which is to say we are experiencing a trajectory of the way in which we have been taught to experience the world in a particularly myopic way in particular sectors. And then I'm partial to the comments of Joan Donovan, who's a research director of the Shorenstein Center for Media, Politics, and Public Policy. She writes, I think 100 years from now, we're going to look back on social media and see it much like lead pipes. Love this. It brought to us amazing things, and it weaponized so many things and caused so much difficulty and destruction. So I think the first place, she writes, I would look to is how we might see these media habits changed. As Donovan mentioned, there are algorithms, and algorithms not just pointing to things that you like. And she writes, I recently bought a backpack and now I can't stop getting backpack ads. But also what they do is that people respond more and more to things that they're upset about. And I think this is very important. They respond more and more to things they're upset about than the things that they're interested in or want to dialogue about. This is the link back to that personal experience that we have that gets fed or gets challenged by the narrative in our larger culture. She writes, so it creates an echo chamber where the volume goes up and up and up. And how could we get to a place where, I mean, there were a lot of normal people who went to Washington, D.C. to protest and what they thought the election that was stolen, though they were obviously misled on that. But then a subset of them, actually, many of them came home and said, I can't believe I did this. How did they get there, she asks. Well, they got there because things got normalized over time as the anger and the fear and the echo chambers continued. Got normalized over time because of the echo chambers that continued. That suggests to me what I learned as a child, which is that it is really important for one to be able to have the ability to interrogate the world and to interrogate one's self. That our beliefs are only as good as they are when we are able to place them against the evidence that we trust and place them against what is being offered in the world. And that it is time for us as a religious tradition to be able to do the work of healing in two ways, which is to continue to promote the evidence that we learn to trust over time, and to continue to promote healing by engaging in conversations with people whose experience of the world has been dramatically different from us. This is the harder work that we do. The age of disbelief, if you will, is born both out of a technology that gives people the capacity to be able to manipulate hundreds of thousands of millions of people in a nanosecond. And it comes out of a history of exploitation. The real experience of people who have been marginalized or who have been brought into narratives that continue to place their well-being up against the well-being of everyone else. I hope that in the days to come, we're able to develop means for us to be able to do both of these aspects of the work. And I applaud our 8th principle task force for bringing us to consider some of the history and some of the ways of being that will continue to challenge the status quo, that will broaden our history, that will help us unpack the ways in which we too may have engaged in this process of marginalization over time. I also welcome those in our midst who continue to challenge us to listen more deeply to each other and to find the means to be able to demonstrate compassion for those whose beliefs may be very different from ours, but whose human history, whose human experience is understandable. Only by wedding these two things, only by broadening our perspective and challenging ourselves and engaging in that humble process that I learned as a child, that allows me to claim truth, but does not free me from the obligation to challenge that truth at every moment. And the ability to be able to craft relationships that transcend truth differences and helps us understand what it is that we have experienced in the world that has shaped us so dramatically. In the days and weeks and months and years to come, this is the work I think that we are led to do. And I hope we do it with all earnestness. Amen. And blessed be. Let us join together in our litany today. And I want to invite Reverend Cheryl Lachey to join me in delivering this. These are the words of our colleague, the Reverend Robert Weston. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth.
Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery.
A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief.
Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away at the false.
Let no one fear the truth that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief.
The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing.
For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger and more secure.
Those that would silence doubt are filled with fear. Their houses are built on shifting sands.
But those who fear not doubt and know its use are found on rock.
They shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of their hands shall endure.
Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help.
It is to be the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth.
Please join in our closing hymn, The Spirit Says Do.
Do and that spirit says do. You got to do and that spirit says do. Do 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 and that spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when that Spirit says sing. Sing when the Spirit you got to sing when that Spirit says sing. Sing, sing, sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Spirit says sing.
You've got to groove when the Spirit says groove. You gotta be grooving, you gotta be grooving. You've got to groove when the Spirit says groove. You have got to groove. When the Spirit says groove, you've got to groove, oh Lord. You've got to groove when the Spirit says groove. Says groove. Spirit 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 says groove. You've got to rock when the Spirit says rock. You've got to rock when the Spirit says rock. When the had the car before I walk, and now I do the 1-2 step. I heard the spirit and it said the groove, yeah. That's why I do my own shuffle, tapping feet, clapping hands. If you could talk, you could sing. If you could walk, you could dance. Spirit told me bust the track with the vocals, and I come around your city rocking with the locals. Fading out, got my eyes closed. I think the Lord talking to me, gotta get up all in my zone. Candle gazing after doing Kundalini. I wrote it in my journal, trying to find the true meaning. It ain't gonna happen overnight, I really ain't stressing. I'ma get the blessing. I don't need Google directions, I just follow spirit. I think I start to hear it. The elders talk about alignment, I just start to get near it. Walk along the path, with or without a clue. When the spirit says do, I make it do what it do. Come on.
When the spirit says do.
Oh yeah.
You got to do.
Y'all know what it's like when the spirit says do. I mean, you just gotta do what it do. I know right now with some spirit talking to you inside and it's telling you to do something, and whatever that is, go with it. All right. Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit says do, and you know what? I'ma do what I do. You go ahead and do what you do, and that's how we gonna do what we do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, baby. Hey, 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 hey. Oh yeah.
Our closing words this day are from colleague Mark Mosher. With what benediction can I leave you? This. In your life, may you know the holy meaning, the mystery that breaks into every moment. May you live at peace with your world and at peace with yourselves. And may the love of truth guide you in your everyday life. Amen. Once again, beloved, worship in this place has come to an end, but our service continues. Next, with an opportunity for conversation and gathering. May yours be a wondrous and wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.